In this week's drive, we get the United Nations on track for the first time, head for an early end to a day's work, fall down in turn 1 twice, and join a marathon rally raid event in Brazil. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week at Silverstone with the first ever practice sessions for the new World Cup of Motor Racing A1 Grand Prix. After a string of national team launches around the world, it was the first time a group of the cars were on the same track. The A1 World Cup is a contest between up to 25 countries, and so far 19 teams have signed up. Only 15 of them were at Silverstone for the 2 days of practice, ahead of the first race on the 25th of September at Brands Hatch. A1 is the brainchild of Sheikh Maktoum Hashim Maktoum Al Maktoum.
And most people don't even understand it yet to be able to fully predict its success. No one can predict its success. The only people who know what's going on in A1 are people in A1.
Sadly for the Sheikh, there's no team from his native United Arab Emirates. So far, Lebanon is the only Middle Eastern country with an A1 team. The Lebanese team know they can attract wide support from both the region's fans and financial investors. One of their 2 young drivers is Basil Shaaban, who gained some experience racing in the United States. He has high hopes that A1 can not only challenge Formula One, but could well eclipse it.
Well, Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport, technically speaking. The cars are the most advanced technologically. So in that respect, A1 Grand Prix cannot compete as of yet. The cars are identical, they're on a level playing field. The budgets for developing the cars is much lower than Formula One. But in terms of a sporting concept, here you have nations racing versus nations instead of personalities as in the drivers and teams racing teams, which is the case in Formula One. So in terms of garnering worldwide interest, A1 could very well compete with Formula One, and some people predict it might even eclipse Formula One in terms of its global outreach.
The 2 days of practice proved to be largely trouble-free for all the teams, with drivers and engineers happy with the reliability of the cars. The identical single-seater V8-powered Lola cars are provided by A1 and run on a franchise basis by national teams with drivers and sponsors from that country. Sheikh Maktoum is hoping A1 will make progress off the track and challenge the global domination of Formula One.
God willing, with the success of A1 Championship, we will compete with Formula One. The difference is huge. We are the World Championship for cars. We represent so far 17 countries. One of the differences from Formula One is that every one of their teams has 2 cars, where we have only 1, and all our cars are the same. This is the main difference.
The A1 season kicks off at Brands Hatch before travelling to Germany, Portugal, Australia, Malaysia, the UAE, South Africa, Mexico, both the east and west coasts of America, and finally China, with a total prize of $1 million. For the record, the British team set the fastest time ahead of drivers from Brazil, Switzerland, France and Portugal. The top 10 teams were all within 1 second of the best lap, but the Chinese team would seem to have the most work to do. Heavy rain delayed the start of round 7 of the German Touring Car Championship at the Nürburgring. The race began with a rolling start behind the safety car, but once the 20-strong field were released, there was plenty of contact as they slid around the greasy track. Manuel Reuter's Opel Vectra was in trouble when he came together with German compatriot Stefan Mucker. But as the race progressed, the weather cleared, drying the surface and forcing the cars into the pits to replace their wet weather tyres with slicks. Former champ Bernd Schneider, 7th in this year's title chase, got the jump on reigning champion Matthias Ekstrom in the pit lane and briefly took 3rd place from the Swede. Ekstrom fought back and regained 3rd place on lap 10 at the pit curve to quiet approval from the Audi management back in the pits. After the next set of pit stops, Ekstrom was in an even stronger position. This time, the reigning DTM champion found himself in the lead and ahead of former Formula One champion Mika Häkkinen. In trying to fight back, Häkkinen succeeded only in sliding off the track, leaving the way clear for Ekstrom. Häkkinen's loss of time allowed Denmark's Tom Christensen to come through into second place, and when Gary Paffett's Mercedes also eased past, the Finn was dumped off the podium. Ekstrom came home to complete the 156-kilometre race in 1 hour and 5 minutes, just a second ahead of Christensen, with Paffett 5 seconds off the pace. But Paffett's podium finish wasn't enough to prevent Ekstrom taking the lead in the title chase, 51 points to Paffett's 50. Christensen is third with 36 points. In contrast, the weather was warm and sunny on the other side of the Atlantic. Brian Herter started on pole, his third of the season, for the Indy 400 race at the Michigan International Speedway. And Herter held on to the lead for most of the race, 159 of the 200 laps. On lap 139, Helio Castroneves' engine blew, sending flames out the back of the car. Castroneves was eventually classified 21st, his worst result of the season.
While that is dramatic pictures, Scotty, you've told me before a lot of that is the...
In just her 11th career IRL start, high-profile rookie Danica Patrick was unable to complete the race. She was classified 20th after being forced out on lap 163, also with mechanical problems. A four-car crash involved Townsend Bell, Jacques Lazier, Roger Yasukawa and Kosuuku Matsuura with 20 laps left. Bell spun entering the second turn, and in a chain reaction, the others collided with one another. It was a string of big hits, the leading drivers sitting ducks in their wrecked and still sliding cars. Yet despite the repeated high-impact hits, all four drivers were treated and then released from the track's infield medical centre. Soon after the restart, series points leader Dan Weldon made a move to take the lead from Herter. He slid inside Tony Kanaan, but was unable to pass Herter's car. On the last lap, Weldon made another run coming out of the final turn, but Herter held on to take the checkered flag for his first win of the season and his first since 2003. Thomas Scheckter finished third, Tony Kanaan fourth and Sam Hornish fifth. Weldon increased his overall points lead, 78 more than second-place Hornish, with 6 races left. It was also a warm and sunny afternoon for the first ever Champ Car race in San Jose, California. The 1.4-mile street circuit presented plenty of challenges, including the cars having to cross railway tracks at 2 different points, nearly launching into the air. Inevitably, there would be suspension damage on this ridiculously rough section. A narrow left-hand turn also took its toll, with at least 5 cars bouncing off the wall. Team Australia's Alex Tagliani lost 3 laps after bouncing off a wall and slowly heading to the pits with his right front tyre off the ground. Most drivers wait until they get back to the pits for the crew to make repairs, but Justin Wilson calmly refitted a rattled loose nose cone as he drove. Another Team Australia driver, Marcus Marshall, only completed 52 laps before mechanical trouble ended his day on a track that gave drivers a huge amount of trouble.
It's not that physical actually, but it's a tough little circuit, you know. It's very violent, curbs, railway. Track speed was fantastic. It's just really disappointed for the whole Team Australia, Aussie Vineyards and Visa, our new sponsors. You know, we've been 4 push rods this weekend, and we obviously didn't have the car right, and we both struggled, Alex and I, and it's a tough weekend from that aspect.
The mechanical mayhem forced many drivers out of the race prematurely. Championship leader Sebastien Bourdais was in control throughout and led 63 of the 93 laps on the way to a dominant victory. The victory was his 3rd of the season and 13th of his Champ Car career. The 26-year-old Frenchman won by 3.7 seconds, nearly the entire pit straight, with Paul Tracy second. In the championship, Tracy slipped a further 6 points behind Bourdais and now trails by 28 points in second place with 6 races to go.
Get the real celebration going.
We go down south now for the 13th International Rally dos Sertões. It's the biggest off-road race in Latin America, covering over 4,000 kilometres through rural Brazil. Over 200 vehicles take part in the 10-day rally in different categories for cars, motorcycles, trucks and quads. Bike racer Paulista Jean Azevedo completed the first 110-kilometre stage 7 seconds ahead of Fabrizio Marchesi. Spain's Marc Coma was penalised for going over the 150 km/h speed limit and finished down in 29th place. Sandro Rochenbach eventually managed to get himself back up and into the race after a brief delay, having run off the edge of a cattle grid. Local drivers also occupied the first 3 places in the car category in an event which is regarded as South America's version of the Paris-Dakar. Increasingly, competitors like Spaniard Coma use the Brazilian event as a training run to keep up their fitness and test mechanical systems. Wilhelmo Spinelli and navigator Marcello Vivolo finished in the lead in their Mitsubishi after the first day. Spinelli and Vivolvo held an advantage of 48 seconds over Paulo Nobre and Dico Teixeira in second place. Eduardo Dominguez and Marco Almeida were a further 31 seconds behind. The rally came to a premature end for Lelo Junior and Rosa Leo, their car spectacularly falling into a ditch during the first day's action. Getting back out took a lot longer than going in. And in the trucks, driver Ricardo Dominguez and navigator Nilo De Paulo dominated the first day for Ford to set up a lead of 40 seconds over the Volkswagen of Luciano Cunha and Carlos Brites. Andre Azevedo and Michael Villata came third. The third stage, over 200 kilometres, saw Marc Coma fastest in the motorcycle section, but he was again penalised 15 minutes for exceeding the 150 km/h speed limit. He was placed third, 11 minutes behind Chilean Carlo de Gavada. Double winner of the event, Edio Fuchter and João Eduardo Gomes, were to have a painfully eventful day. Pirelli test driver Sergio Barata and Alessandro Fabrizio ran in the top 5. Spinelli and Vivolvo were defending their win of the previous year and their status as multiple and reigning Brazilian off-road champions. Spinelli, a noted local filmmaker, also competes in South American circuit and endurance racing. Driver Eduardo Dominguez and navigator Marcos Rogério Almeida took stage honours in the car category to move into second place overall in their Chevrolet. They completed the 200 kilometres in 3 hours, 21 minutes and 33 seconds. They finished the third stage 2 minutes and 3 seconds ahead of compatriots Ulysses Bertoldo and Rafael Capaoni. Brazilians Felipe Bibas and Emerson Cavacin were third, 3 minutes and 36 seconds behind. Fuchter missed a marker and was obliged to turn around on the course, normally a cardinal sin. In this case, he was to meet fellow competitors Christian Baumgart and Alberto Andreotti head-on and at high speed. Baumgarten broke his left foot, Andreotti suffered cuts to his knees and Gomez to his hands, while Fuchter suffered various minor injuries. All 4 competitors were airlifted to hospital. Cleaver Kohlberg, one of Spinelli's arch-rivals, held the overall lead with his co-driver Luis Palu. Bertoldo is a former World Rally Championship driver, now teamed with Capuani. They finished the third stage in second position, 2 minutes and 3 seconds off the pace. Ronaldo Varela is a past South American rally champion and made his Paris-Dakar debut in 2000. Brazilians also took all the first 3 places in the truck division. The World Superbike races returned to Brands Hatch in England for round 8 of one of the two-wheeled motorsport's toughest competitions. Australia's Troy Corser went into the weekend's races leading the championship by 94 points, but showed few signs of easing up as he won Saturday's Super Pole contest. And the 33-year-old former champion duly screamed away from the front of the grid to take the lead in race 1. Japan's Noriyuki Haga was ready to capitalise on any mistake that Corsa might make, taking the lead on lap 2. The pair swapped the lead throughout the 25 laps. Reigning world champion James Toseland's wretched season continued with mechanical failure on lap 8. The Briton recovered to take 7th place in race 2, but with Corsa out of sight, Toseland's hopes of keeping his title have evaporated. Corsa timed his final push for the checkered flag to begin at the start of the final lap, and with Haga unable to come back, the Australian picked up another 25 points. It was a big day for Corsa's Suzuki team, winning their first superbike race at the famous track. Haga took second, with Reggie Laconi of France completing the podium. Race 2 saw Corsa snatch the lead again, with Haga breathing down his neck. They were joined by another Australian, Carl Muggeridge, but the pace proved too hot for the Honda rider, who crashed out trying to cut inside Haga on lap 1. Haga was in no mood to let Corsa take both races, and he hit the front. He survived a number of desperate manoeuvres from Corsa to hang on and take his second race win of the season, following a first place in the Czech Republic last month. Another Australian, Chris Vermeulen, finished third. Just 8 races remain in the season, and the next race is at Assen in the Netherlands. With Corsa picking up 45 points on the day, he extends his lead at the top of the ladder to 110 over Vermeulen. The rest are racing for second place. Loket in the Czech Republic hosted the 13th round of the Motocross World Championship. Pouring rain made the conditions very difficult for riders, and there was a pile-up on the very first corner of race 1. Honda rider Josh Coppins, in second place in the championship race, was badly affected and had to fight his way back through the field. Championship leader Stefan Everts was able to take full advantage on his Yamaha. Coppins has gained ground on Everts in the last 3 rounds of the championship, so Everts made sure he made no mistakes as he and Michael Pichon pulled clear of the field. New Zealander Coppins was able to battle back to take 3rd place. Everts, hoping to retain the MX1 title he won last year, took the checkered flag just over a second ahead of Pichon. The second race featured an even bigger pile-up on the first corner. This time, both Everts and Pichon, first and second in race 1, came off their bikes, but Everts was badly tangled. Multiple world champs Stefan Everts and Jonathan Barragan were almost the last to restart the race. The second corner saw another Belgian former champ, Joel Smets, and Paul Cooper amongst those involved in another tangle. Pichon was also taken out and finally managed to get restarted, but could only finish in 24th place. Everts battled back to 4th, but Coppins took advantage of his rival's misfortune, leading from Suzuki factory rider Kevin Strabos. Coppins was on track to take victory before running wide on a corner and allowing Strabos through. Strabos' 4th place in race 1 and win in race 2 gave him the overall Grand Prix win, ahead of Everts, and Coppins was 3rd. Everts extends his lead slightly in the championship to 39 points with 4 rounds left. The next event is in Germany, and the top 4 riders are all Belgians or New Zealanders. The World Trials Championship arrived back in the United Kingdom, the first round to be held on the mainland there for 4 years. British fans were delighted to have the chance to see their favourite riders on home soil at the Great Britain Grand Prix at Hawkston Park. And a home favourite was also making sure he would impress. Dougie Lamkin delighted the home crowd by winning the event. An impressive second lap from Lamkin secured him the win. However, the victory was not easy, and the tough trial was reflected by unusually high penalties scored by all the riders. Defending champion Takahisa Fujinami, Lamkin's Montesa HRC teammate, eventually finished in 2nd place, but the Japanese rider set the early pace. He ended the first lap on 27 marks, with Albert Kabastani in 2nd on 32 and Lamkin back in 3rd on 36. but the second lap was an entirely different matter. Although he went into it in the lead, Fujinami was unable to capitalise on his advantage as Lamkin upped a gear, dropping just 14 marks for the lap. The 3-week break since the previous round in Italy had clearly benefited the British rider. It had given him time to recover from injuries sustained on the first day of competition in France. He went on to take the second lap in style, and with it, top spot on the day. Spanish title contender Sherco's Albert Cabastani eventually finished third. Championship leader Adam Raga of Gas was unable to find the form that's placed him at the top of the leaderboard, and he finished the day in 4th position. The championship returns in September with the 2-day German Grand Prix at Gefries. Raga still leads the overall standings, but his lead has now been cut with Fujinami, his closest challenger, 13 points behind, and Cabastani a further 4 points adrift of Fujinami. Lamkin lies 4th, 5 points behind Cabastani. Britain upset the odds and qualified for the World Cup final on home soil, and 2 days later, Sweden had the chance to do the same in round 2 of the qualifying competition. But they were up against the favourites, Poland and Australia. Germany made up the quartet of nations taking part, but this was a final in itself for the German team, and they would gain only 4 points on the night. In the end, it was no surprise that the meeting went down to the last 3 heats, with just 2 points separating Sweden on 45 and the Aussies and the Poles on 43 each. Then Andreas Jonsson, the world junior champion back in 2000, took control and blasted away from the rest, gaining 3 precious points and taking Sweden 3 clear of Australia and 4 ahead of Poland. There were still 2 heats to come though, and anything was possible. The tension seemed to get to the reigning and 6-time world champion Tony Rickardsson, and he was lucky not to have been excluded from the penultimate heat for a crude elbow on Poland's Jaroslav Hempel. Germany's René Schaefer crashed out in the process. The race was restarted and Rickardsson stormed away, winning by a distance over Australia's Davy Watt and a bitterly disappointed Hempel. That summed up Poland's night as poor luck and mistakes at crucial moments scuppered their chances. Six points in arrears, Poland played their joker, which was double points scored in the final heat. This can only be done once in a meeting and only when at least 6 points adrift. But if Tomasz Golob could win the final heat and Peter Carlsen came last, Poland would force a race-off to see who would qualify for the final. With Carlsen left at the back behind fast-starting German skipper Martin Schmalinski, Golob fought a thrilling tooth-and-nail battle with Australia's Lee Adams, passing and repassing before Adams got the verdict on the line by less than half a wheel. Had Golob won, Poland and Sweden would have finished level on points and faced a runoff. Instead, Sweden finished on 51 points to join Britain in the final at Wrocław in Poland, with Australia and Poland both forced to go to the last chance race-off against Denmark and the Czech Republic. The final score put Sweden ahead, and the home crowd breathed a sigh of relief. So, whether you're running into an old friend, climbing to the top of the heap, or just falling off the back of the pack, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.